Support for the Abortion Diary comes from listeners like you. This diary entry was made possible by the generous financial support from Emily Grice. If you want to help us continue to share our stories, become our patron on Patreon, or make a one-time donation on PayPal. No amount is too small, and it's all tax deductible. Abortion happens every day. Millions of people around the world will have an abortion each year, but the majority of those people will never talk about their abortion experiences. What if millions of people broke their silence and told the truth about their lives and their choices? This is Melissa Madera in Pembroke Pines, Florida, and you're listening to the Abortion Diary podcast. These are the stories we share.
In September of 1965, I felt a little different, and I was having sex for the first time. I was old. I was 21. So I was kind of a late bloomer for sex, but I made up for it, trust me. I was in New York in the 70s, late 60s and 70s. I made up for everything I missed in my teen and college years. So anyway, I'd had sex, and I found myself pregnant. I was in a group therapy, and I mentioned it to some people in the therapy session. And these were all really like white middle class people. And one of them said to me, my girlfriend just had an abortion. I can give you a doctor's name. So that was great. So I went to this doctor in New York City, a woman doctor, and she examined me and she said, yes, you're pregnant. And she said, it's going to cost $1,000 to have an abortion. Now, I had just started teaching. My salary was $3,000 a year. $2,000 less than men, shall we say, in 1965? Yes. And I was asked in the interview if I planned to get pregnant or married. And I hadn't. But there I was, pregnant, teaching in a school, teaching 5th grade. So $1,000. I said, gee, I don't have $1,000. I can't do this, I guess. She said, well, ask your parents. I said, no. There is no way I'm asking my parents because, I don't know why. I just wanted to be independent from them. They had just moved across country. They had started a different life. I just didn't want to tell them that their daughter had kind of screwed up. So I said, no, I can't ask them. So we negotiated. It was probably my first real negotiation, down to $700, which I then had to borrow from, some of the money I had to borrow from my brother, my best friend, 2 best friends, and the guy who I thought was the father of the baby gave me $50. It's really nice, big of him. Anyway, he kind of wanted to deny it anyway. When I told him I was pregnant, he didn't want to deal with it at all. So she set me up for this abortion. And the way it was is I was to get myself to Newark bus station and wait on the platform with a white carnation in my lapel, so they would know how to recognize me. And somebody would meet me there, pick me up. I had a roommate at the time who wanted to go with me, and I wouldn't let her. I'm doing this on my own. I'm going to have an abortion on my own. So I drive. I happen to live in New Jersey. I drive to the Newark bus station, park my car. I get on the platform, and I have the carnation in my coat. And this woman comes up to me, and she has 2 other girls in tow. They're young girls. I was 21. They were like 18. They were best friends from Cape Cod. They were both pregnant. So the 3 of us get in her car, and I remember she was this little wiry, dyed blonde-haired woman. I sit in the front seat, and she drives us off. Now, I know where we are because I grew up in New Jersey, and we go to South Orange. And on the way, we're talking, and she turns to me and she says, if my daughter ever got pregnant, I'd kill her. And I'm this nice, I'm a nice Jewish girl. I like keep my mouth shut, and I'm thinking, oh, great. We get there. I appear to be the calmest, and it's in East Orange. It was East Orange, South Orange. One of the Oranges, they have these huge brick apartment buildings. And we go to one of the apartment buildings, and we go to the 14th floor, and we go into an apartment. which is now set up as a doctor's office. I can't imagine what the neighbors knew or didn't know or didn't care. This is 1965. And I appear to be the calmest, so they take me first. And they don't give me as many drugs as they probably should have. And I wake up in the middle of my abortion screaming because it's painful. And all I remember is I wake up and it's like a movie above me with the lights, in an operating room. They have lights above you. I see the lights and I'm yelling, obviously. I hear, and the doctor, and it was a woman, slaps me and says, "The neighbors," slaps me, which puts me back under. And then I wake up. And when I'm in recovery, someone says to me, "You were either more pregnant than we thought, or it was twins." Thank you very much. Thank you so much for that. So I'm in recovery for a couple of hours. I'm seriously drugged. And they drive me back to the Newark bus station. And I go to my car and I rolled, and it's a November gray, rainy day, cool. And I roll down all my windows and I drive home. It's about a half hour on the Garden State Parkway to where I lived. I drive home with all the windows down, so I'm cold, so I can stay awake. I get home. I left the house probably at like 8 in the morning. I get home around 4 or 5. I walk in the door, and my roommate, who's been sitting there flipping out the whole time, but I don't acknowledge that, says, "Oh, God, thank heavens you're okay." And I think, ugh. And I said, "I'm tired." And I lay down on a couch right in the living room, right by her, and I go back to sleep. And I wake up, and my boyfriend is there. And he had brought me we were eating these subs at the time, brought me my favorite roast beef sub from our favorite place. And that was the day of the abortion. I don't think I took any time off. I think I went back to teach on Monday. Luckily, there was a holiday for the next Thursday and Friday. And I had a cousin who went to Cornell University. So we decided my roommate and I were going to, and she had a crush on him. So my roommate and I were going to go drive up to Ithaca, New York and visit my cousin. My first time in Ithaca, New York was 1965, right after my abortion. We got to Ithaca, and we stayed in the same rooming house. I don't quite remember the whole thing anyway. So my cousin had this really lovely man friend who was an engineer student who wanted to be a poet. And I think he was also engaged, but he and I started to hang out, and I couldn't have sex, so that was great. So he and I just cuddled, and I encouraged him to be a poet, and he was just totally lovely and sympathetic to me about my abortion. It was this lovely little weekend with this guy whose name I have no memory of at all, but he was so sweet and so nice, and it was so good we couldn't have sex for so many reasons. So that was it. And my good friends knew. Of course, my roommate knew. My best friend knew. My brother knew. I think that was it at the time. I don't think I told other people. I did sort of remember the anniversary every year, which right now I can't, which is so good because it's way over. And that's my story. I mean, I was lucky. I was extremely lucky. I went to an actual MD. I know that. Yes, it cost a lot of money. Yes, it was a rich woman's doctor. There's no two ways about it. I was lucky I could raise the money. I was lucky I went to a doctor. I was lucky I drove home under drugs and got there. I was lucky I was surrounded by supportive people. I was just lucky. I mean, I was 21, and there was no way I was going to marry, even if it wasn't this guy. It was another guy. It was one or the two. Neither one was I going to even want to be near. And if I had had a baby, I would have to move to where my parents were and raise it with my parents. It was like, I was 21. I was just separating from them. There would have been one very screwed up child in this world if it had happened. Very bad. So I know I did the right thing. I don't regret that. I don't regret not having children at all. I've never had a child. And I don't regret that. Not one bit. Doesn't. There was a time when I was 40. I was having lunch with a friend, and I had this, I just felt like I wanted to have a child. I was 40 years old. I had this urge, and I said to her, I really want to have a baby. And I wasn't with anybody, and I was fine having, I was just going to like find somebody and have a kid. I said, I really want to have a baby. And she said, no, you don't. She had two kids. She said, no, you don't. And that was that. It was over. So really, no, I have no regrets not having kids at all. Not one bit. I'm very lucky that I inherited a stepdaughter when she was 10, so that was perfect for me. And now I have a granddaughter, and I'm really lucky, that happened, but I would have been okay if it didn't. The other interesting, okay, so I moved to New York City in 1968. I got very involved in the women's movement, in the second wave women's movement. I joined the consciousness raising groups. I was in one of the witch consciousness raising groups, one of the first ones. I was on the street protesting for abortion rights in 1970 in New York City one day, and one day I wasn't. And all I knew was that New York it was legal to have abortions in New York in 1970, but I didn't really pay attention. And I'll come back to that. And in the women's movement, I started a feminist theater troupe called It's All Right to Be Woman Theater. We did theater stories from our lives, but I did not do a story about having an abortion. At that time, I was with women. So, if it did anything, it was about women. The group was half lesbian, half straight. And that troupe was around for 6 years. We did stories from our lives. We performed all over the country. We were very popular. Then after that, I thought, gee, I need something else to do, and I opened a feminist bookstore called Juna Books in New York City on West 10th Street, and I had that for 5 years, and decided to move with a partner to upstate New York. And so here I am now in upstate New York, and many things have happened, and I'm working for an affordable housing organization, and I hire this young woman to work with me called Connie Cook. And Kathy says, gee, my mother is a woman named Connie Cook, and she was a New York State legislator and blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't really paying attention to what Kathy said. And I met her mother a couple of times. I just knew she had run for Congress and hadn't made it. In fact, she ran for Congress when I was living here, and I was probably debating whether to vote for a woman or vote for a Democrat because Connie Cook was a Republican. So I didn't know what to do, and I don't remember what I did, whether I voted for Connie or I voted for the Democrat. I just don't know. I really don't know. So anyway, I met Connie later, and that was that. And then in 2009, Connie passed away, and I got involved in the memorial service. I helped make the program and went to the memorial service. And speaker after speaker after speaker talked about this amazing woman who had decriminalized abortion in New York State in 1970. She was one of 3 women in the New York State legislature, and she was a Republican. And she helped decriminalize abortion in New York State. And that's why I no longer had to be on the street protesting for abortion rights in 1970 because of Connie Cook. And that was among just a little bit of what she's done. The woman was amazing and way, way ahead of her time. People weren't doing this kind of stuff as legislators back then. She was amazing. So after the service was over, I was standing around with a bunch of women, and I said, including our current assemblywoman, I said, gee, somebody should write a book about Connie Cook. I said, no. Somebody should make a documentary. And at that point, I had been making documentaries. So they all looked at me, and somebody said, well, how much would it cost? And I made up some figure because I've always done them so inexpensively. And that was that. And 3 years later, the money started to come through from our current assemblywoman. She was able to get me some money. And I started to fundraise, and I made this documentary, Connie Cook, We called it Connie Cook, a documentary. And it's about her life, a lot about her, what it took for her to pass this abortion bill in New York State in the 1970s, which is threatened, and it currently is. It will be continued to be threatened, and about other wonderful things she did as an assemblywoman and just as an amazing person and lawyer. When I show this film, which I have been, I always talk about my abortion. I always talk about the motivation for making this film and motivation for admiring Connie so much. So, really, since 1969, my whole life has been about being pro-women and telling women's stories. And that's what I continually do in all my work. My theater, my film, everything.
So you have been really open about your abortion for a long time. Have you been open about your abortion from the time you had an abortion, or did that start at some other point in your life?
Yeah, I was not open about it. In fact, I was 40 when I finally told my mother that I had had an abortion. And she told me she had had one. That my brother was born. I was born 14 months later. And right after me, she got pregnant again. And she couldn't do it. I mean, the poor woman. So she went to her doctor, who gave her an abortion. I think it really wasn't until the Connie Cook film. So I guess it wasn't really, it's only been a few years that I've actually been very vocal about having an abortion. Didn't happen right away. I mean, if it came up in conversation, people were talking about abortion, I would say I had an abortion. Oh, maybe it was soon, maybe it was before that, because maybe it was around Jennifer Baumgartner's film I had an abortion. So actually, maybe it's more than a few years. Maybe it's more like 10. But now I talk about it even if people don't ask. It just comes up. I talk about it at film things. I just talk about it. I think I've even posted it on Facebook. So I'm in a group of women in upstate New York. We call ourselves the EAS group, Erasing Abortion Stigma, and we made a video about all of those of us who had abortions and went on to have terrific lives. It's called We Are the Women You Know, and 1 in 3 women have abortions. So, I'm totally out there. Now, it took me a long time, very long time.
Can you tell me a little bit about the EAS group and how that came to be?
So I was invited to join. I didn't know some of the women in it, and we were talking about what projects could we do to support abortion rights. And as it is my want, I said, video. Let's make a video. And that was the project that I got involved with. There were other projects that I did not get involved with. A doctor from Rochester, I think, came and spoke to students who might be interested in going into the medical career and be abortion providers. I didn't get involved with that piece. I was out of town anyway, but I helped to make this video, which ends on a really upbeat note to vote. So now we want to take the video and we want to take that piece out and then make it more about making sure we can keep abortion safe and legal for everybody. So we're going to change the ending. So that's what the group is about. And I don't know what else, given the fact that we have a despicable person who's about to be president, who would not mind seeing every woman who had an abortion probably killed or thrown in jail, and want to see every woman pregnant and bound in their house. Now that we have that kind of person as president and all the people in his cabinet, I think our group is looking at other projects to do and going to become more forceful because we have to. And I feel the same way about the Connie Cook film. I make a film. It's my 3rd documentary. I make a film. I get it out there and I walk away because I'm ready for the next project. That's how I am as a creative person. That's why I like doing this kind of work. That's why I like being a theater director. You do a play, it's done, you go do the next play. You do a film, it's done, you go do the next film. You do a video. I can't leave Connie Cook because what she says is so important, and her message and the fact that she's a Republican is so important that I really am sticking with the project and getting it out there. I don't have funding anymore, so it's going to be more of a labor of love in some ways.
Can you tell me a little bit about the project you're doing now about women's wisdom?
Having moved on from Connie Cook, I came up with this idea to tape women in my county, in Tompkins County, about any advice or wisdom they might have for other women. And what I did a twofold thing. One is I asked women to fill out a survey, an online survey that asked questions like, what's the best advice you ever got from an older woman? What's the worst advice? Did you take that advice? What advice would you give to a woman younger than you? What do young women have today that you didn't have? And then what women would you honor? So I asked those questions on the survey. More than 70 women filled out the survey from all around, actually, even though it was supposed to be geared for Tompkins County. And then I just sent out the word that I wanted to tape women asking those questions. I taped about 41 women so far. And my idea was to make a video and a reading together, a video and a theater piece together. And what ended up being is I made a video and a reading. So it's a video of women talking about answering all these questions. I realized that I wanted every woman's voice. It wasn't just going to be 5 women or 4 women, which is more like a documentary style. I wanted every single woman who I interviewed to have a voice in this film. So as I emailed them all, you're getting your 3 seconds of fame or your 10 seconds of fame. And some of you are even getting your 15 seconds of fame, but that's it. That's what you're getting for this particular piece. So I took words from the online survey and I edited the women who let me tape them. And so I have this film and this reading that work together that I've shown 2 times to sold out audiences. We're showing it again Tuesday night, hoping it'll be sold out again. And again, it's a project that I made before the election. And now it feels like to me it has even more significance. It's really women talking to women. And in fact, that's where I want to be in my life, is really having women keep their voices heard and alive and well. And I can see now with these sold out performances that women are hungering for this. You know, the women's movement, supposedly we're post-feminist. No way in hell are we post-feminist. There is a hunger for women to be saying what they say and for women to hear the other women and for us to empower each other. And that's what this piece is for me. So I'm very excited that it's going to be shown again. I have a Facebook page in which I've been putting up some of the videos, longer videos of women answering the questions, and I will continue to do that. And now it's turning into an installation, which is going to be put in our Tompkins County Public Library in March for Women's History Month. And it's going to be the edited versions of everybody's interviews. So everyone, you can go in and you'll press on Sue Perlgott and there's her interview. I didn't actually interview myself, so I won't be there, but other people. Maybe I'll do a little intro. I might do an intro. In fact, I probably will. People could press that or not. So that's my plan. My plan is that people can go in and hear the interview of anybody they want. If I could pull it off, it would be great to put the interviews in the segments to go with each question, but it's a lot of editing, and I'm mostly doing this on my own. So that's what I'm doing. And the other thing that's happened is that I'm not going to the Women's March in Washington. I'm not doing that. And there's a group of women who started a women's march in Ithaca to support that march for women who can't go. And in my stepping up to the plate, because I need to, because I have to, because this world is going to turn into something horrendous. And I have a granddaughter who I don't ever want to see squashed. So and it was a Facebook page. I don't know any of these women. Though I know people in town, I didn't know one, not one. And I just signed up. I said, okay, sign me up. I'm going to be one of the organizers. So I've signed up to be an organizer to this march that I don't know. I'm meeting them all for the first time next week. And I definitely, one of them, the woman who started it is not able to continue right now. So I see I'm going to even take more of a role because I have to. And I'd like to film it too. I'd like to tape it if it's not too cold out. So we'll see what happens. And I don't know. And I met one day, a couple of weeks ago, I met 2 really dynamic young women who want to do film. And we're going to get together and see what the three of us can do as three women with film. They have other skills too. And we're going to do that. So I just want to use my film, my video, and my theater to be talking about women and the subjects that need to be talked about now. Social justice. That's where I'm headed. I mean, that's where I've always been, but now I'm continued to be dedicated to do it.
I have a question about the women's movement, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you actually did end up getting involved in women's movement.
So I moved to New York City in August of 1968 from New Jersey. Not a very big move, 35 miles, but a world apart. I moved there without a job. No, I had a job. That's right. I had a job in Newark. So I was reverse commuting to Newark, teaching in a special ed school. I moved to the village. I had a sweet little 1-bedroom apartment in the village, owned by a guy who was a former CIA agent. Yeah. He used to come knock on the door. I don't know why he'd come knock on my door, but there'd be a lot of marijuana probably floating around in the hallway. And he would come just to remind me that he existed. Yeah. So I moved to New York, and before I had moved, I had taught in a school where one of my students' parents was this wonderful woman. She was unlike most of the other mothers that I had met. She was an artist and had friends in New York City, and I was dating an African-American man, and she had married one once. I mean, it was like, that's just not the town I was in. It wasn't, you didn't do those things. So here was this amazing woman. And when I moved to New York, I went into kind of a deep depression. I quit the job I had because one of the kids punched me. I couldn't quite handle it. And then I went into kind of a deep depression. So this woman comes into New York, throws me into a cab, and takes me to her friend Lynn's house and introduces me to Lynn, who then tells me all these things that are going on in New York. There's this thing going on, that thing, all these women's things. And Lynn had been involved in the Miss America protest where they had a lamb and stuff. So she was very involved in the women's movement. She told me about an evening where women were going to be talking about abortion rights. And I should go. And so I go, and I don't even know if she went, but I went by myself. It was in the village, I could walk, and I went by myself. And it was all this academic stuff about abortion. And I finally went up, there was a little break, and I said to them, I think it was the Red Stockings group that did this. And I went up and I said, I'd like to share my abortion story. This is 1968. And I guess I was public. And so after, in a break, they said, okay, there are some women here who want to talk about their abortion. So I stood up and shared my story. And about 3 or 4 or 5 other women stood up and shared their stories. And it was such a damn high. There was a guy there who tried to pick me up. And I was so not interested. I was like, nah. I went home alone feeling so good about myself. I didn't need this guy, It was amazing. So that was the beginning for me. And then Lynn introduced me. I got involved in a consciousness raising group through Lynn. And then Lynn was doing street theater at a place called Alternate U, which was, so before Alternate U, was it the same time? Alternate U was a Marxist alternate college on West 14th Street and 6th Avenue. You couldn't get credits, really, but there were all kinds of courses. It was wild. It was like all these wild, Marxist radical courses. And I was hanging out there. So I was going to Alternate U, and Lynn was doing improvisational theater, street theater type workshops. So I was taking these street theater workshops and meeting all kinds of people, men and women. And somehow, I must have been working. Can't remember what I was doing. Somehow I was supporting myself. Don't have a clue how. Rent was pretty cheap. It was cheap then in New York. So I got involved in a troupe called Burning City Theater. And it was a street theater group in New York at the same time as Pageant Players, as Bread and Puppet, as Living Theater. It was all this amazing alternative theater going on in New York at the time. And I got involved in Burning City Theater, and we did political theater, street theater on the streets, and mostly on the weekends in the park, in Central Park. We would perform and, get money. I don't know. I quite not. No. I don't know how I survived, but I did. I survived. I might have lived on a credit card a little too much, but I survived. So I joined the street theater group, and I also was in women's consciousness raising groups, and probably doing other things. I can't remember what. And the street theater group, we toured all around doing our theater. We came to Ithaca, New York, and performed at Cornell. We performed in Cortland. We did an upstate New York tour in February because nobody else would. Only people from New York City who didn't know anything about snow would go to upstate New York in February. Oh my God. Anyway, I was a hippie. I was fairly promiscuous. I was having a good time. And when I was on birth control by then, and I should talk a little about birth control. After I had my abortion, I knew I needed birth control. You couldn't get birth control back then unless you were married. So I went to my gynecologist and I said, gee, I don't get my period regularly, which was true. And if you got on birth control pills, it would make you regular. So I said to him, I'm not regular. I need birth control pills to be regular. He said, fine. It wasn't even a question. He got me birth control pills. So I think if you just knew the right things to say, but you couldn't do it unless you had a doctor's prescription. And so I was on birth control. So being promiscuous I wasn't going to get pregnant, which was a good thing. And back then there weren't that many diseases. So it was, I did this all at the right moment, trust me, because I couldn't even begin to think about doing it now. So I'm in Burning City Theater, and in the summer of 1970, we decide as a theater troupe to move to a camp in Keene, New Hampshire, and make theater together, and live together as a commune and make theater. So we all sublet our apartments and moved to Keene, New Hampshire. And I think I was like 27, and I had like a 19-year-old boyfriend, and he came along, and we kind of were dysfunctional when we got there. We couldn't work together as a troupe. It just didn't work. So someone said, let's work together as women. It wasn't me. It just came from someone else. And we started to work together as women, doing theater as women, which was not done then. And we started to do a play, and it just didn't work. Trying to do some kind of political play. And then someone else said, why don't we tell stories from our lives? Again, it wasn't me. I can't take any credit. And we ended up making the most gorgeous play based on different ages. It was all age. It was like something had happened when someone was 13, 14, I think 17. Anyway, we did it that way, kind of age. We made this play. At the same time, there was this thing called the Festival of Underground Theater in Toronto. And they invited Burning City Theater to come perform, but Burning City Theater didn't have a play. So Burning City Theater said, we'll come with our women's play. So we definitely had to make a women's play. And it was all the street theaters and all the alternative theaters were going to be at this Festival of Underground Theater. And they said, okay. And they were shaking in their boots because they thought, oh my God, women's theater, we're going to come up there and scream and yell and throw our bras at men and say, men are shit, and blah. They had no idea. So we go up and we have this spectacular play, and it's all about us. It's not about them. It's about us. And we each told the story and acted it, and the whole troupe acted it out. I get the chills still because it was an amazing experience, and the audiences were blown away. So much so they asked us to do it again. So we performed twice.
What was the title of the play?
I'm looking over here because I have it in a book somewhere. I don't think it had a title. Oh, there it is. It's called Guerrilla Street Theater. So this guy, Henry Lesnick, luckily, somebody gave him the script to the play, which, if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be here. Okay, where were we? Burning City Theater. What is a Woman? A revolutionary soapbox opera. Play 1 is American Bandstand, and that's my story. Play 2 is the story of Mary and Arrigo. Play 3 is the story of an unwed mother. Play 4 is the story of a college graduate. Play 5 is the story of a young mother and her child. And play 6 is the story of a mother and her daughter. So we did these, and it's actually in script form, which is so amazing. And there's a little article about how it started and everything. And I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. We got to separate from the men. Let's work as women. No. They were all involved. So I made this. Do you know what a sociogram is? Okay. So the sociogram is all these circles, and then you put people's names in them. And you put who's connected to who. So I made a sociogram of the collective, the commune. Turns out, unbeknownst to me, that everyone's sleeping with everyone. Men, women. I had no idea. Cross couples. I'm so out of it. I just don't see these things. But I found out. So I made the sociogram. And then on the bottom is me, totally unconnected. And this one other couple, totally unconnected. That was the sociogram. So I'm clearly not in the group. And I'm like trying to get them away. And also discovering that, in fact, I'm attracted to some of the women in the group. I'm like, okay. So no, nobody would separate. We did perform the play in New York City. We performed it a couple of places. And I knew I had to work with women. So back to my friend Lynn in New York City, the one who took me to all these. She saw the play, and I said, Lynn, we've got to form a women's theater troupe. And she said, right. Back to alternate you. We started having workshops with women, just women. Women would come and go. And then one day there were 10 women in the room. And we said, this is it. Commit yourselves now. We're forming a women's theater troupe. Everyone said yes. And then I had one other friend who I said, okay, but we're also including Roberta, pulled her in, and 11 of us started It's All Right to Be Women Theater out of the street, and I left Burning City Theater. So It's All Right to Be Women Theater was together 6 years. It had a major impact on my life doing that theater. I knew at the time that it was different, that I was in a special place, that I needed to appreciate what I was doing. I don't live in the moment a lot. I was living in that moment because I knew it was really important. And it was an amazing experience. So much so that, a million years later, I tried to make a documentary. In fact, I called a reunion. I had a reunion in New York City. Everyone who was alive came. One woman had died, one of my best friends. I didn't know this. When I opened my bookstore, when I left the troupe, I kind of left some of the friendships, which was really too bad. Anyway, 9 women came to the reunion. One had died, and one just wanted nothing to do with the group. So she didn't come. But people came from flew in. So we had this amazing reunion, which I have on tape. It was a fantastic experience. In 1976, we mostly did workshops. We had finished. We were done. And I was okay with that. In the meantime, several of us had gotten jobs teaching women's theater at some of the schools in New York. This was New York, early 1970s. It was a wild, wild, wild time. I came out. I was with women. I totally identified as a lesbian. Everything I did was all within women's circles. And it was a time of tremendous growth for me. I grew up. I matured. I came into who I always was meant to be. I was always felt like an outsider where I was growing up. I always felt different. And I was, as it turns out.
Why do you want to share your story?
I share my story because I never, ever want another woman to have an illegal abortion, although I'm afraid it's happening. I don't want it to happen. I don't know how to, I'm working to stop it. So that's why I share my story, because I want women to continue to have abortions if they need to. They need to know that there are those of us before them who did it, who went on to lead perfectly fine, fabulous, productive lives, and many people had children after that because when they wanted to, when they could. So that's why I tell my story, so that we can continue to have this total right to have control over our bodies, and nobody can tell me what to do with my body.
For more information about the Abortion Diary podcast, visit us on the web at theabortiondiary.com or email me at melissam@theabortiondiary.com. If you would like to share your story, visit our website, click on Share Your Abortion Story, and send me a message. Or drop me a line at melissam@theabortiondiary.com. We're trying our best to climb the charts on iTunes, so if you're a fan of the podcast, please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and write us a review. Even if it's not how you listen, you'll help us reach more people. You can also leave a comment on our website or take our listener survey. I love to hear from you. You can also listen to over 160 stories on our website, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, or your favorite podcast app. If you'd like to support the Abortion Diary, you can make a tax-deductible donation to us on Patreon or PayPal. You can also bring me to your college campus or organization. I use the money generated from that to make more Abortion Diary episodes. And remember to follow us on Twitter at Abortion Diary and like us on Facebook. A special thanks to you for listening. I'm Melissa Madera, and I'll be back next week with a new story.